Hey Joe, this seems like a century ago at this point, but back in February you talked about how good of a fit this was not only for you but just for your family and everything. And then obviously the pandemic hits, and I'm just curious like how that process has been of just getting your family adjusted and everything in a world where it's probably hard.
Yeah, well, it it's been good, and we kind of started the whole journey out in the beginning of June with a 46-hour RV ride. So we decided we didn't want to do the whole airport and plane travel thing, so we bought an RV and drove cross country to get here. And it was, for first time RVers, it was very interesting. But we've settled in nicely. Obviously, a lot of the things that you'd like to do in the city and the surrounding area, just because of kind of social distancing and things we haven't been able to take advantage of. But we've done Crater Lake, we've done a bunch of the falls. My daughter will be a sophomore here at UO. My middle son is a senior at Marist, and he's playing football. And my youngest one's in 7th grade at O'Hare. So we really enjoyed the city. We've done as much as we can, but it's been a very positive experience for us thus far.
Next question, James Crapia, the Oregonian.
Joe, as you guys try to settle this quarterback competition, we've been hearing so far that Tyler's still pretty much working with the ones exclusively and AB with his twos. Will you try to get Anthony some looks with the ones tomorrow? Is that the plan, or how do you try? And in the next few days forward, also with Wednesday's kind of mini scrimmage, how do you plan to take this the next 4 days of practice?
Yeah, Tyler's been working with the ones, and as you mentioned, AB with the twos. We're going to sit down this afternoon and have a little personnel discussion and talk about reps heading into the scrimmage. So we'll kind of make those decisions this afternoon. But yeah, those guys have both done a very nice job. I think we've seen steady progress, throughout camp thus far, and the young guys are improving as well. But yeah, we just want to, come out tomorrow and, see the entire offense play with a bunch of physicality, create explosive plays, while limiting turnovers. And I think they've, like I said, have taken positive steps thus far.
Next question, Eric Scopel, 247 Sports.
Hey, Joe, I think you guys returned some known commodities at receiver, and there's quite a few guys that we just haven't seen a whole lot of. I guess what's been the progress of some of these guys, Devin Williams? I know we saw Brian Addison last year, but that's another young player. Chris Hudson, we've heard a lot about. Kind of what have you seen from some younger guys?
I think first and foremost, Coach McClellan is doing an awesome job with those guys in the room, providing information, getting them motivated, getting them to play hard with a high level of detail on the field. But yeah, they've all had their moments. Devin made some nice plays yesterday at practice and carried that today. Chris Hudson's got a lot of speed, a lot of explosiveness. Addison's done well when we've seen him in there. So I think you got, as you mentioned, Johnny, Red, and Micah played a lot of football last year, and some guys behind them that are, looking to, kind of make their mark. And I think, like I said, they've done a nice job. And I think Coach McClellan has done a very good job with the room.
Next question, Julian Minenson from KZI.
Hey, Joe, good to meet you. Just wanted to touch base on, I asked Andy this same question. Without fans this year, I'm sure you, as much as you would love to have fans at Autzen Stadium, are there any advantages to not having fans on the offensive side of the ball, maybe communication-wise, or maybe on road games? Do you see any pluses at all when it comes to not having fans this year at games?
We're certainly going to accentuate the positives of not having it, and obviously, I haven't experienced it, but everyone I've talked to said that the home crowd and environment in Autzen Stadium is one of the best in the country. But I think from a home game perspective, obviously, if things aren't communicated and there's not a crowd roaring, you're going to be able to yell things out on the sideline, and the kids will be able to hear them. And then for road games, you're not challenged with some of the stuff of the crowd getting cranked up on a third down and having to use a certain cadence or a certain level of communication. So those would be the two biggest things that stick out to me relative to lack of fans or crowd noise.
Next up, Ryan Thorburn from the Register Guard.
Hey, Joe, obviously replace the entire offensive line. That's high on the to-do list. But when you think about Coach Cristobal's background in that area and Miraball's experience, is that a situation where you just kind of trust the five they put out there and don't worry about it a lot? Or do you have a big hand in trying to figure that puzzle out too?
I think with anything that we do offensively, and obviously with Coach Cristobal having a background in offensive line play, it's a collaborative effort. But to have the the kind of say benefit or advantage of having two guys like Coach Cristobal and Coach Mirabal in the same room when you've got to replace, the entire front five in addition to, Panay, obviously. It's a huge challenge. We've been mixing guys in and out and using different combinations across the board, but with their level of expertise in conjunction with the talent we have there, and I think what we're doing fundamental technique-wise and schematically to put them in a position to be successful, I think we're going to have a high level of confidence in our offensive line, entering game one.
Next, Kevin Wade, 247 Sports.
Hey, Coach. Moving into tomorrow's scrimmage, I know it's the second scrimmage for you guys. What are you expecting to get, maybe that you didn't get in the first scrimmage, or that is just different about the next scrimmage?
I think we want to see a higher level of precision and execution. As I mentioned before, creating explosive plays and limiting turnovers. And I think the biggest challenge from a broad strokes perspective is, this is essentially your fall camp is like your spring ball. And a lot of what we're doing, and we've just about finished our installation, that the kids are hearing and executing for the first time, and kind of exacerbated by the fact that you're going against an unbelievable defense. And when we go out there every day, Coach Avalos and his staff have those guys coached up. They're playing very hard. It's a very, very complex and unique scheme. So, you're trying to put a new offense in against an unbelievably coached defense and, do it all at a very high level in a short amount of time. And time is not our friend, but the best thing about it is, as it pertains to the culture of our program, a lot of people are doing the same thing around the country, and Coach Cristobal has made it very clear that we're not going to use anything as an excuse or a crutch. So, we're just fired up to take the next step tomorrow and just continue to increase our level of execution and precision.
Next is A.J. Jacobson from Rivals.
Hey, Coach, great to hear your son plays for Marist. I played there myself a couple years ago.
Go Spartans.
Yeah, go Spartans. Early camp standouts. So, I just want to get your opinion of, who's catching your eye and, who are you very pleased with at this point after a couple weeks of fall?
I think it's different people at different times. We've talked about the quarterbacks at length. Very exciting to see C.J. Verdell and that running back group operate. C.J., great season last year, and he's a very, very explosive back. Coach Mastro does, a great job with that room. We've talked about the depth at the tight end position, putting the pieces in place at O-line. And, I think the guys that have come back and that you've seen play, Johnny, Jalen, Micah, CJ, those guys have all had moments. And then, the young guys are continuing to impress as well.
Next up, Tyson Alger from The Athletic.
One of the things Andy talked about on just such an accelerated schedule is cutting the fat and focusing on important things. And one of the things he did say was mental health. And I'm just curious of how much of a conversation that is with your players, especially this year, and how maybe that's evolved throughout your coaching career.
Yeah, I think it's, it goes back to, once again, the culture that coaches created here that, the players don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And, from the top down, we make a concerted effort to make sure that our guys are doing well, and always asking them the questions of how are things going off the field? How are things with your family? How's social life? How are your academics? And, when you take care of those things, it makes it a lot easier, to focus on coaching them, and being demanding without being demeaning. So like I said, with 3 young kids and, just with, everything that's going on in the world and the country right now, to dismiss mental health as being something that you don't find important in the program, I think it's something that we don't do. So I think checking in with our guys and making sure that they're doing well off the field is, number one, in their best interest, and 2, will also help us be a better football team.
Next up, James Krupia, The Oregonian.
Go back in the spring, we were talking about Devin and BA really fit the prototypical X mold. But hearing from Johnny and Micah how they're working outside as well, mainly with the first team. I don't want to make this comparison and get ahead of skis, and it's kind of unfair to them, but do they fit more traditionally in the mold of what Godwin did for you in that capacity? Because, I mean, again, they're not 6'5". They're just not, whereas Devin and BA are.
Yeah, and I think it's, a lot of things you want to have guys who are kind of like a Swiss Army knife a little bit, where if somebody happens to need a blow or goes down, you want to be able to put your best 3 or whatever personnel grouping that you have on the field. So I think that, Coach McClendon is doing a great job cross-training those guys where, Micah could play Z, he could play slot, he could probably jump over at X if he needed to. Johnny could play either of the outside positions, and as you mentioned with Devin and with Addison. So I think you kind of have an idea of what you want from those three positions, where the X plays mostly to the boundary. He's a guy that can draw a lot of single coverage. If he gets doubled, you want to work to the field. The slot's more the shifty guy. The Z's a speed guy. So you kind of have a thought process of what you want those guys to be, but you don't want the execution to suffer for kind of what the template of that position should be, if that makes sense.
Next question goes to Eric Scopel, 247 Sports.
Like AJ, I also went to Marist, so go Spartans. I'll get
There we
that. I know last time we spoke about the tight ends, you hadn't really seen enough in pads to really make a call or have an idea of what the hierarchy might look like. Has there been any more clarity or separation amongst those guys? And there's 5 scholarship players competing.
I mean, it would be the latter. I mean, those guys are all rolling through there. I mean, DJ's done some really nice things coming over and, adjusting to the position. But, yeah, it's Coach Williams does a great job with those guys. They're all getting a ton of reps. And once again, a lot of things that they're doing are new to them, because we only had 4 spring ball practices. So, I don't know it's necessarily at this point about separation as much as it's about those guys getting a ton of opportunities and continuing to improve, from a fundamental and technique standpoint.
Next question, Warren Williamson, Oregon Duck Football News.
Joe, good to see you again. Some of the guys already asked the questions that I was going to ask, but I am interested. You mentioned about your RV trip going from East Coast to West Coast, and immediately made me think of the Griswolds. Any crazy moments when you were coming out with your family?
We did have some minor mishaps with the tank when you're trying to empty that thing on the way out. Nothing quite like what you saw in RV with Robin Williams. Probably a little lesser extent. We had the shower break at one point, so we had to kind of fix that. But no, it was, like I said, for a guy who grew up, just outside of Pittsburgh and kind of not privy to a lot of things that go on in the RV world, and pulling into campgrounds and needing to plug things up and do all these other crazy things. But so I'd say there weren't many. There wasn't a Wally World moment, so to speak, but there were a lot of fun memories that were made.
Max Torres, Scoop Duck is next.
Hey, Coach. Hope you're having a great day so far. Since Coach Cristobal has been here, we've seen him just bring in some behemoth offensive linemen and really become, that team that wants to ground and pound and just, wear down their opponents. And with your offense, we've heard, so much explosion. How do you kind of balance tempo and, use that in your attack?
I think because we're a multi-tempo team, we're more concerned with running the best play against the look presented as opposed to running a bad play quickly, and we can play as fast or as slow as we need to. And, just the mentality that Coach Cristobal has brought here, and, 22 years, the best teams I've been on, the mentality of the team is dictated by the offensive and defensive lines. And Coach always talks about playing with physicality and knocking people back and doing those things. And, I know we've done a nice job throwing the ball and creating explosive plays throughout the history of this offense. But I believe for the last 11 years that I've called plays, maybe longer, we've had a 1,000-yard rusher in the offense. So our ability to be successful offensively, I think, is predicated on our success running the ball, because everything stems off of that. So like I said, when Coach and I talked about, what he wanted from this position and what we were going to do, our shared belief that running the football was of primary importance was a big part of it.
Time for 2 more. James Crapia, the Oregonian.
Joe, I know you at this point you're obviously very focused on camp and the personnel and the like, but in preparation for the season and a short season and the like, how difficult and a challenge is this, not just from the timing and the uniqueness of this, but I mean more of it's 6 games, but 2 of the 6 have new defensive schemes. And I don't know, it seems to me disproportionately this conference lost, at least in the North Division, a really good clip of like its top 50 tacklers, of its main pass rushers. So either from a scheme change standpoint or personnel scouting standpoint, this is just inherently difficult for offensive coordinators this year. So before camp even, how much of a challenge is this to prepare for? It's fewer games, but it seems like a bigger challenge.
Right, you hit it on the head, and it's dealing with the knowns and the unknowns. And I guess one of the benefits of having all that time during quarantine when we weren't here and we were home and working on Zooms is that our staff did a real nice job getting as much advance work as they could, kind of contingency planning if there was going to be a season. So the coordinators that we know who they're going to be, we've done all those breakdowns and we've done all that preparation and, watched all that film, and, guys who are going to be new, you kind of, do your best to maybe look back to where they've been or what they could possibly do. But yeah, it's difficult because, like you mentioned, there's the element of the unknown, but, we got to focus on doing the best that we can be, you know what I mean? And improving our precision, our execution, our physicality, and, let the chips fall where they may in terms of, who we're playing.
Final question goes to Kevin Wade of 247 Sports.
Hey, Coach, you've recruited in the Big Ten and the SEC. I was just kind of curious, what differences have you noticed recruiting with Mario Cristobal and the staff at Oregon over the past 10 months?
The tenacity of it and the importance placed on recruiting. And like I said, been to a bunch of different places and been around a lot of great head coach recruiters. And I think when you look at what we've been able to do this year and in the past, the head coach's personal involvement in the recruiting process plays a major role. And I think our recruiting department does an unbelievable job from an organizational standpoint, targeting the guys, creating a great process. I think our assistant coaches are all bought in, and I think we do a great job kind of say team recruiting, where it's not just one guy, the position coach or the area coach. But to me, the biggest difference is the head coach's personal involvement. It's the attitude reflects leadership, and when the head guy is personally invested in the recruiting process, all of us assistants want to work as hard to make sure that we're holding up our end of the bargain.